Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to this live Course Report Q&A. I'm Liz Eggleston. I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are choosing a coding bootcamp. So this is my one plug. If you haven't looked at Course Report yet, check it out. We've got thousands of alumni reviews, hundreds of interviews with students and alumni and instructors at coding bootcamps across the world, everything you need to make a decision about the best bootcamp for you. So today we are gonna dive into a question that we get all the time from bootcampers, which is how to get the most out of your first job after a coding bootcamp. So I wanna welcome John Rose and Ricardo Morales. John is an alum from Wyncode in Miami who now works at Care Cloud, and Ricardo is a supervisor at Care Cloud. And Care Cloud is a cloud-based electronic health record software company based in Miami. So John and Ricardo are the perfect people to talk about this topic. John is going to share his experience looking for the perfect first job after he graduated, and Ricardo is going to talk about how bootcampers can stand out to employers and continue to learn and grow after a coding bootcamp. So I'm really excited about this. Ricardo, thanks so much for being here. Do you want to tell us really quickly about Care Cloud and your role there?
Sure. So I'll give you first, I guess, the marketing pitch real quick. So Care Cloud was funded in 2009. So we could still maybe be considered a startup, although we're much bigger than a bootstrapped company at this point. The goal of Care Cloud is to modernize healthcare, both the experience for physicians and for patients, right? We want to provide a modern platform that seeks to streamline the workflow and support effective patient engagement, basically. But really, I think what attracts boot campers, right, and developers and the tech guys is it's not really that we're a healthcare company. It's that at its core, we're a software company, right? We build software. We're using cloud-based, bleeding-edge, open source technologies in an agile environment. And really, in South Florida, there are not a lot of companies like this at this point.
Mm. Yeah, John was telling me right before this that there are about 40 developers. The engineering team is pretty big at Care Cloud.
It is pretty big, and we can talk about that later if you want, but we're actually expanding too, so because we just got more funding.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Well, yeah, okay, so you recently raised a $30 million Series C. Like, what does that mean to Care Cloud? What does that mean to your company as you expand? Does it mean you're adding developers?
It does, it does. So first of all, it's not just the amount of money, it's the type of quality of capital. So although we're based in Miami, we're backed by venture capitalists based in Silicon Valley. So some of the examples are Intel Capital, some Fortune 500 companies like First Data, PNC, Financial Services. So it's not just your small investors. So we're in essence a tech company. So with this money, what we want to do is, we're going to be posed for aggressive growth. So we're going to be scaling the team and our cloud-based platform. And of course, this translates into more hiring opportunities. We've got more to do, so we need more help.
Fantastic. John, thank you also for joining us. I appreciate it. You're a Wyncode alum. You graduated in August 2015, so you've been out in the real world for a little while, and now you work at Care Cloud. But can you tell us what you were doing before you came to Wyncode? Like, why did you choose to learn to code? Why did you go down this path?
Sure. So before Wyncode, I was a component engineer living in New Jersey. My degree was in
electric. What is a component engineer?
Good question. I spent a lot of time sourcing electronic components like resistors, capacitors, transistors, and some larger assemblies as well in China and all over. I wasn't really too happy with what I was doing. I wasn't really enjoying it. I didn't feel any passion for it. And so even though my degree was in electrical engineering, I always really enjoyed computer engineering. It's what I originally went to school for. But after a particularly difficult Java course, I didn't think I was cut out to code. But I kept at it for a few years, trying to learn on my own. And finally I decided, you know what, this is it. I just got to go for it if I ever want to make it happen.
Why did you choose Wyncode in particular? You went from New Jersey to Miami. Like, tell us about your research process there.
Sure. So it was a particularly brutal winter. It was around March. I was just done with the snow, and I knew I wanted to get somewhere warmer. So I started looking around, saw some coding schools in South Florida and California, And I did a lot of research, and I found out that Wyncode were planning to get their hiring stats audited by a third party, which they've now done. And I thought that was a really good thing. Every other school was just posting some numbers, and this gave me some confidence in Wyncode. So I decided to give him a call. I spoke with Diego. He was the admissions director at the time. And he just did a really good job of convincing me of what Wyncode would do for me. They would be by my side and work with me until I found the job of my dreams, which they did.
So I think that's really cool to hear from your, like, a student's perspective and why you were drawn to Wyncode. But Ricardo, in a similar vein, sort of, you know, there are a lot of coding boot camps now. I think we have over 350 in our directory. Why does Care Cloud hire specifically from Wyncode? What is special about their graduates, or is it like something specific about working with Wyncode as a hiring partner that you like?
The answer is yes. No, we don't, just for the record, we don't just hire from Wyncode, but we have had better success with Wyncode. And I believe there are multiple reasons for that. I think they also have the first mover advantage. At least they were the first bootcamp coding school that we were introduced to in the area. And from the beginning, we started a great partnership relationship with Yuha and Joanna. We also know their lead instructor, Ettore. You know, he was very, you know, geeks know each other. So he was well known with the rest of the team here, the Ruby developers on the team. But we've also, because of this relationship, we've had an opportunity to influence their curriculum a little bit, right? And kind of prepare, you know, tell them this is what you need to teach because this is what we're going to need when they come out. So that's great, right? So when they come out, they can start adding value day one. We've also been part of the interview days where they get a little bit of experience, you know, interviewing, because they interview with us. It's like a practice run in a way, but it gives us also another advantage because we get to meet them ahead of time, right? We got a preview of the candidates. We participate in pitch day many times as judges, so we have the opportunity to see them right there and maybe make a hire on the spot, or at least kind of scout them out.
Yeah.
And in general, Wyncode has a very good reputation with us, with the Knight Foundation, with the Miami Tech community. So far, so good. So,
when you've hired Wyncode students, what has stood out about those Wyncode students? Like, have you hired them because of their like final project? Do you generally hire them like at a demo day, at a hiring day on the spot? What is it like? What, I hate to put pressure on you, but why did you hire John?
Well, John has worked out great, and we don't hire them on the spot. We do kind of scout them out, right? And then they say, we want to talk with this person, we want to talk to this person, but they go really through the same vetting process that most of the other developers on the team go, even if they're more experienced. It's just that we know that their expectations will be of a junior person. So look, we know that they're going to have junior tech skills, right? So we're looking for a lot of other soft skills, just because they have potential, right? So they need to be very motivated. They need to be problem solvers. We'll give them live problems to solve. They need to be thinking outside the box and be able to be pushed out of the comfort zone all the time, and basically be kind of sponges of knowledge, right? Because that's what they're going to be here when they're paired with somebody with more experience. So those are the type of kind of soft skills that I think are very important to be able to get here. And they, you know, they do get interviewed and they get technical questions and stuff like that, but we know that they're junior, so we're not going to try to drill them.
Totally. John, how did you become that sort of sponge of information? Like, coding bootcamps are not easy. Wyncode is not easy. It's, you know, 10 weeks of intense work. Like, how did you prepare for the first day of class and then digest all of that information at the pace that you needed to throughout the course?
Sure. So before starting Wyncode, we all get pre-work to do. So we're giving certain courses we have to complete online, certain things we have to do to our computer to ensure our environment's ready to start coding. So the first and seemingly most obvious thing that some people don't do is you got to actually do all that pre-work. It's very important you get a taste of things and you're a little bit more ready and prepared. But once you get started, the most important thing you could do is just put your all into it. Realize that these 10 weeks are going to be your life. Luckily for me, the first 2 weeks were mostly review because I'd been trying to teach myself for a while how to code, but that didn't mean I ever left early. I would stay till 10, 11 o'clock every night, come on weekends, do the projects, and do a second version of the project if I thought there was another interesting way to attack it. So for me, the best way to absorb it is to just keep doing new things and trying to expand on what we learned in class.
Even though you had a background in engineering, it wasn't necessarily, computer science, but you had an electrical engineering background. Like, you still felt like you needed to put in just as much effort to get as much as you could out of it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even though I had a little bit of a background, and even, like I said, the first 2 weeks were mostly a review for me, after that, it was all brand new information. And it was those first 2 weeks of putting in the extra effort that really set the tone for the rest of the time, where I knew this is the level of effort required to get the most out of it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, John, getting into the juice of sort of why you decided to go with Care Cloud and talking about that sort of research process, once you started looking for jobs, what were you looking for in a company? Were you looking for a specific job title? Did you want to stay in Miami? What was that process like for you?
Sure. So I'd really grown to love Miami the 2 months I was here so far. I just enjoyed the tech scene here, the art scene. Everything was just new and different for me coming from New Jersey. And so for a particular title, it didn't really matter. I was just looking for a position that would allow me to code right from the beginning, which is luckily what I got here. On my first or second day, I was already assigned to a user story. I was working with a senior developer, and right away starting with a programming language that was brand new to me. I'd never seen, in this case, ActionScript, and that's exactly what I was looking for. A place to continue my education, learn brand new things, and just trial by fire, just start doing.
Yeah. Did Wyncode help you figure out which companies to apply for? How did you go through the actual application process?
Yeah, so like Ricardo was saying, Care Cloud had been holding interviews, and that's how I came in contact with Care Cloud. We call them winterviews because Wyncode. And so a couple of the senior developers here came and interviewed groups of us at a time, and that's how I got connected with Care Cloud. I was also connected with a few other companies through this process, and it just worked out for me. We do have a weekly Win Work gathering where those who are looking for jobs can get together and share leads and discuss their techniques, and that's another path as well.
Have you referred other Wyncode students to Care Cloud? Are there now more than one Wyncode student working at Care Cloud?
So we're now at 7 currently here.
That's a good handful.
Yeah, so it's been pretty good. I've given a little bit of input, luckily. I was able to give a little bit of input on each person. And everyone here I just thought was absolutely stellar in their cohort. And just recently, I handed in a resume for someone who was looking to change from being an instructor at Wyncode to wanting to work full-time in development. And he's working here now and doing a fantastic job.
So cool. So cool. Ricardo, from your point of view, what does that interview process look like when you're recruiting bootcamp graduates? You mentioned that a Wyncode grad is not going to be a senior developer on the first day.
Right.
What are you looking for instead? And what does that interview process look like? Are you giving them coding challenges or not, or kind of tweaking the process?
We tweaked the process a little bit, but it's very similar to the main process that we use. We know that while they're at Wyncode, during those weeks, it's very intense, and they just have no time for anything else. But immediately after pitch day and basically graduation, we engage the candidates that we think have potential, and then we send them basically a coding challenge, and they actually have to write a little piece of software. John, how long does maybe that take to maybe half a day?
Yeah, for me, I got started on a Saturday. I was done on Sunday.
Yeah, so it's a little coding challenge. There's no time limit. We're actually looking to see, there's minimal requirements, but we're trying to see their creativity, basically what they do. It has to work. Then we bring them in, and we actually, part of the interview is actually talking about that challenge and why they wrote the code a specific way and so forth. And it's like they'll get questions that are like problem solving, questions, not necessarily, they might have to whiteboard something, but we're not really looking to know that they know a particular language like the back of their hand, but that they're thinking, right? They have abstract thinking, they can problem solve. We do a panel interview, which for some is a little intimidating, but really actually it's not, because, or it shouldn't be, because it gives them an opportunity also to, if they're talking to 3, 4, 5 people at the same time, it's not a firing squad. It gives an opportunity to know who they're going to work with too. And also those people are normally leads on different teams, and they will see if John or whoever is a good fit for their team. And sometimes they're fighting for the candidates. Like, well, I want them too. So it's actually an advantage to have and you get done with it in 1 hour, and that's it, right? Instead of having a whole day of interviewing a person one after the other. So that's really the process.
Yeah, I like that. I've been hearing more panel interviews becoming more popular, and I think that's totally right. It reduces that time period that somebody has to spend interviewing, and kind of shows how you're going to vibe with the whole team, which is really cool.
Right.
So once you've decided to hire a Wyncode grad or a coding bootcamp graduate, how do you bring that junior developer onto your team? Like, year and 7, new hires from Wyncode. What kind of like training, onboarding programs do you have in place at Care Cloud? And like, why are those important for junior developers from bootcamp specifically?
Yeah, so, well, we assume they can already code somewhat. So the best way to learn, I think, is throwing them in the fire. So we start with smaller stories that we call, and normally typically maintenance things or fixing little bugs so they can get their feet wet. And we'll pair them with somebody who they can ask questions, they can coach them. But we deploy to production constantly, and we have 2-week sprints. So the good thing is whatever they're working on probably will make it out live in less than 2 weeks, and somebody will be using it, which is actually very nice, right? A lot of people work on stuff that never sees the light of day, but they know that this is for real, and really that's it. They get stories just like anybody else.
Are they paired with like a senior developer? Are they pair programming on those first few projects to like ramp up, or are they really on their own for the first few weeks?
No, I don't think they're on their own, and we do like them. We want them to struggle a little bit so they can solve their own problems, but we don't leave them drowning, right? They're not on their own. It's in our own interest too, that the stuff that they're coding is going to be good because it's going out to production. But we try to help them. They're always free to ask. I think Care Cloud has always been has an open door policy, and everybody's always willing to help them out.
So Wyncode teaches Ruby on Rails, some JavaScript. Is that pretty consistent with what y'all are using at Care Cloud, or do new hires have to learn like completely new languages, which can be a little bit intimidating?
We have some other languages too, but what Wyncode teaches matches most of our stack. We also have big focus on AWS products, and Node.js, Scala, a few other things that are hot right now. We're always looking.
Jonathan, go ahead.
No, we're just always trying to use new things, but they'll definitely have exposure to stuff they've never used. Even if it was Ruby, they're going to be working on Ruby things that they've never worked on before. For
sure. Jonathan, what specifically did the developers and your team at Care Cloud do that you felt brought you up to speed as far as like their technologies, their team dynamics? Like, is there something that you can pinpoint as something that all employers should do from your perspective?
Sure. So for me, I got started on the sustaining engineering team, and what that what that meant was that these are bugs that are already in production and they've been there potentially for a little while. And by starting with researching those bugs, finding out why they exist, and then coming up with a fix for it, I found myself in a whole ton of different parts of the app. So I'd be in one part of the app one day for one story and then a completely different one later. And since everyone is so helpful here, I could go up to anyone and just be like, hey, can you help me with this? I'm really not sure what's going on. And they'll sit down and take their time and walk through with me what's going on. And by starting there, I got a little bit of taste of everything, so that going forward, when I started working on new features, it was like, oh, do you have experience in here? Well, you know, I did do that one bug in that part of the app, so sure, I could probably take that on. So it was a good way of getting a little bit of taste of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Did you like choose to focus on something specific at Wyncode, a specific technology or like a topic that you really took to at Wyncode? And do you think that that was a good idea? Like, do you feel like you kind of graduated with a lot of knowledge in a certain topic?
Sure. So I try to mostly focus on what the lesson of the day and what the homework was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew going into it that I didn't know the right path to become a developer, and I was kind of just trusting in Wyncode in that sense. So I figured, all right, you know, these are the experts. Let me just dive deep into whatever the lessons are. But if I were to say there's any one thing, it would probably just be Rails, because I just found myself more interested in kind of the back end than the front end. But pretty much just whatever was being taught, I would just dive as deep as I could.
I think that's probably a good idea. Sometimes people are like, oh, I really wanted to learn, you know, React or something during this boot camp. But if you are getting an intro to the world of computer science, then it's probably a good idea to go with the flow that Wyncode has set up, right? Ricardo, in a sort of a similar vein, you know, students graduate from Wyncode knowing Ruby on Rails, JavaScript. Do you recommend that bootcamp grads start focusing on something right after they attend their bootcamp? I get a lot of questions that are like, I just graduated from a bootcamp. What's the most like valuable thing I can learn now? Is there something that you think everyone should know when they arrive on day one?
Well, the thing is, the bootcamp never ends, right? So the only advice I can give you, or the best advice I can give you, is never stop learning. It's just the beginning, right? And you have to keep up with technology. It's constantly learning. Just like being a doctor, there's always going to be new treatments and new diseases that come out. So same as with tech. So just keep at it. You know, join the Slack channels, stay connected with the community, read blogs. You know, try to be that sponge, like I said, learn as much as you can. There are so many technologies out there you can learn. You know, there'll always be value for one of them. And if you become a good developer, you can always switch from one language to another, right? The trick is becoming that good developer and have a good foundation.
Yeah, John, in following that, like, is there something? Can you tell us about like a language or just a specific technology that you've learned at Care Cloud? You've been there for 1.5 years, right? So over the last 1.5 years, like, can you tell us about something that you've picked up on the job and how you sort of picked that up? I think it can be really intimidating to boot campers who graduate, you know, knowing like full stack JavaScript, and then they take a job in Python or a completely different language. Can you sort of talk through how you learn a new technology?
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of the fundamentals are the same. So object-oriented, those concepts are going to be the same across languages. MVC design patterns are going to be similar across different frameworks. And using that as your foundation, you can really pick up the syntax and the differences and the conventions for each framework. For example, I was working in Flash, or the Flex framework, which is it's ActionScript, not JavaScript, and it's MXML, and it's not HTML. But the concepts of MVC that we learned with Rails kind of helps you to understand that in Flash. And JavaScript is similar to ActionScript, but ActionScript is more object-oriented. So combining the Ruby knowledge and the JavaScript knowledge, ActionScript was fairly easy to pick up.
Got it. Did you use do you have like a Treehouse subscription, a Code School subscription? Like, are you using outside, sort of education tools, or is it just like you pick it up on the job, don't even worry about like reading outside documentation or anything?
So we have access to a Pluralsight account, which is has some great tutorials. I picked up some React and some Angular from there. But for me, the best way is just coming up with a project, coming up with something I want to do, and then finding the resources to help explain the parts that I don't know how to do.
Yeah. John, do you work on, like, do you have your own projects outside of Care Cloud? I'm assuming yes, but like, do you think that that's important to sort of continuing to grow and learn as a developer, having projects outside of your like strict, day-to-day?
Sure. I actually have 2 projects current, and I just finished up a 3rd project last week. And it's just another example of keep doing, keep learning. The good thing about a project is when you start a new one, you have to set up all the foundational work. Coming into Care Cloud, all the foundation of how like a user works and how other aspects of that works has already been defined, and I just kind of follow. But when I start my own project, I have to come up with, does this make sense to handle a user in this way? So a lot of the foundation of the app, I have to understand and determine, and using what I learned at Care Cloud helps me to ensure that my project's better. And by building out my project, I understand some of the decisions we made internally here at Care Cloud. So it's kind of like a back and forth sort of relationship, which I think is great.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway, is that if you want to get the most out of your first year or so after a boot camp, like, it's not just working on your own, and it's not just working at your first job. It's like a combination of, being curious in all aspects. So that's good to hear. Cool. Awesome. Ricardo, are there like core metrics? Are there like KPIs that you expect from a junior developer? Like, how does somebody who starts from Wyncode at Care Cloud know that they're like doing well in their first 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, so we're an agile shop, so we do 2-week sprints. So basically, just like everybody else, deliver the stories that you set up to start with, and we make sure that your bug ratio is acceptable. Everybody's going to have bugs, right? That's a given. And we want to also see that we are expecting them to make mistakes, especially at the beginning. And as we coach them, know that they learn and they don't keep repeating the same mistakes, right? But just like anybody else, we don't give them a special treatment.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really good to hear, though. It's like, it's fine to make mistakes or even expected to make mistakes, but the same mistakes over and over again is what you're looking for in terms of like success. And I think that's a really like assuring thing to hear, I think, for a new developer,
Yeah, if you're not breaking
what advice do you, oh yeah, go ahead.
If you're not breaking anything, you're not trying hard enough.
That's totally true. Yep, that's so true. Yeah, playing it safe. What advice do you have? And I think you actually gave a couple of good pieces of advice before, but do you have any advice for other employers who are considering hiring coding bootcamp grads, or even from Wyncode? What have you learned over the past couple of years of hiring via this unique channel? It's pretty new and different.
So it was pretty new. We didn't know how it was going to work out. I can say that it's been totally successful. What I would tell the employers that these guys and girls are diamonds in the rough, right? So if you can see past that and you can see what their potential can be, give them a shot. But you have to make sure that you can mentor them. But if you do, you can end up with really, really good quality people on the team. Yeah,
I think that's a good thing to point out, is that if you don't have the resources or the time or the ability to mentor on your team, then it may be less successful. So I think that's a good sort of prerequisite for any employer who's thinking about hiring a coding bootcamp grad. John, you work on projects outside of work. You obviously, work on work projects, and then you also are TAing at Wyncode as well too. Why do you TA? Why did you decide to keep working with Wyncode, and that people sort of stay involved with their coding bootcamp when it's over?
Sure. So what I found for me was teaching is the best way for me to understand what it is that I know. During the cohort, when I would understand something and someone was struggling, I would go to help them right away because it confirms my knowledge on something. And in addition, I would see their point of view and their perspective, something I maybe never thought of before. And so I learned from them as well. And also, there's some areas that maybe I don't have as much practice in. So by TAing, I get an opportunity to do some more practice. And it's just, I also enjoy being with the community and watching people go from struggling with some really basic stuff to building Rails apps that just are frankly really impressive, and just like to watch their journey.
Yeah, it's also so cool that there are now more Wyncode grads working at Care Cloud. I think that's probably a testament to the alumni network and that, closeness there, being able to stick up for each other and, recommend job opportunities to each other. That's awesome. Okay, so we heard from Ricardo about his advice for future employers, but I would love to hear, John, your advice for other boot campers. If there's like one thing that you could change about how you approached Wyncode or approached your bootcamp experience, have you thought about what that would be?
Sure. So if I could change one thing about the way I went at going through my cohort, was I should have spoken more with my TAs, so my teaching assistants. I took a very, heads down, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to get it approach, and eventually I would get it. But I missed out on opportunities to speak to those who already understand it and can maybe give me more insight and perspective on what I was doing. So I definitely regret missing out on those opportunities. Luckily, since now that I TA, I've worked with them, and I get the benefit of what I missed out on. Another reason why I TA. So
yeah,
I was just gonna say, the only other advice I would have is just, this is called a boot camp for a reason. The very best thing you could do is give it your all and just work as much as you can. I've seen a lot of people who struggled in the beginning but stayed late every day, and they end up succeeding more than those who get it right away but don't stay late and don't work hard.
Amazing. Very good advice. You are a natural TA, John. Okay, and then Ricardo, Care Cloud is hiring now, right? How can anyone who's watching this, if they are a recent bootcamp grad or doing a bootcamp now and are like, I have to work for Care Cloud, how can they get in touch and apply?
Yeah, you can always look at our careers page on our website, carecloud.com, and we always keep it updated. And that's the best way. Just apply through there.
Amazing.
If you know,
and if it's a Wyncode student, then they'll probably see you at the next hiring day or.
Yeah, and if you're a Wyncode student, then it also helps if you already know somebody who's here and that can refer you. Referrals always produce the best people.
Cool. I think that those are all my questions, but John and Ricardo, is there anything that we totally that you want to share about your experience hiring or working as a bootcamp grad?
I think that covers pretty much everything everything I would have to say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we're just looking forward to hiring more talent.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to Ricardo and John for joining us. I learned a ton. I hope that everyone who tuned in learned a lot too. And thank you so much for tuning in. We will share this on our blog. We'll share it here on YouTube. So feel free to leave comments and questions and connect with us on Twitter or Facebook and let us know if there's a question that you want us to answer in our next live Q&A. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.